Have you ever felt claustrophobic, like maybe the walls on either side of you were a little too close for comfort? This might have been how Julius Caesar felt in September of 52 BC, except he was busy fighting off 180 to 330,000 Gauls. The Battle of Alesia was the stamp on the envelope when it comes to Caesar's conquests in Gaul, and it would solidify his name in the annals of history as one of the greatest Roman generals ever. But before we stray too far, let's see how Caesar found himself in such a tough predicament in the first place. Caesar was the perfect example of an opportunist, and morals didn't really align with the opportunities for furthering his political career too often. During his campaign in Gaul, he committed some pretty ruthless acts of terror that some might call today genocide, but everyone and their mom was doing it back then, right? No, but seriously, even his contemporaries noted how cruel he was. Caesar would put down these Gallic tribes who rose up against him one by one, and you might think to yourself, wow, that's kind of really dumb of the Gauls. Why don't they just unite under one man who would lead them out of this mess? Well, they did. 5 years later. I mean, damn, talk about a little bit too late. Vercingetorix would be that man, and he was no pushover by any standards. He employed tactics just as merciless as Caesar, and to his own people, namely a widespread scorched earth policy to capitalize on Caesar's lack of a supply chain. This was a somewhat crushing blow to Caesar, but was no means to an end, and not a small decision for Vercingetorix either. Soon after Vercingetorix came to lead the Gauls, he bunkered down in the city of Avaricum, which Caesar besieged. Historians would later refer to this incident as the Siege of Avaricum. Caesar took the city, which turned out to be a devastating event for the Gallic forces, as the Romans slaughtered around 40,000 Gallic people, leaving little survivors. Vercingetorix then feigned a retreat to the town of Gergovia, where he was strategically able to lure Caesar and win a small victory, killing 76 centurions and 700 legionnaires. It needs to be noted too that this is the number Caesar himself gives us, and the real estimated total is way bigger. After this, Vercingetorix made his way to the hilltop city of Alesia, where Caesar pursued him and built an 11-mile-long wall around the city in a military tactic known as circumvallation, and the Romans, in their superior engineering prowess, frequently employed this tactic. This served to cut off Vercingetorix from any sort of food he had hopes of receiving and prevent his escape. Vercingetorix sent out a letter to the rest of Gaul, though, pleading for a relief army to come to his aid. They heard him, and this reinforcement army was no joke. What did Caesar do when he found out that a massive Gallic relief army was marching on his nice comfy position? I mean, that's it. He was in an impossible position where there was really nothing he could do or muster up, other than use that old Roman engineering to build another wall around the first. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Romans built another 13-mile-long wall that we refer to now as the Contravallation. Oh yeah, and this massive feat took him just 6 weeks total. It was also during this time that we see the true reality of the ruthlessness of both of these men. Vercingetorix was running low on food for his army and subsequently decided to expel the civilians of Alesia who weren't military, as he found them useless to the cause and provided nothing except eating up his valuable resources. This included the women and children. He had hoped that the Romans would let them through their lines, but Caesar refused, which did a few things. First, it made Vercingetorix choose whether or not he would let his own people starve in no man's land, and second, it prevented any sort of tactical advantage the Gauls could find if the Romans opened their gates to allow the civilians through. They would be left unreceived by both sides to die between a rock and a hard place. There's no doubt this was completely devastating to the morale of Vercingetorix's men. The Gallic relief army finally showed up, and the numbers were huge. They encamped near the city, and simultaneously the Gauls were attacking both sides of the Roman walls, but they were repulsed. They later attacked at night, but through the valor of the men like Mark Antony and Caius Trebonius, were repelled again. The Gauls then actually got their act together and identified a weak point in the Roman wall. 60,000 men were selected and led by a man named Vercassivellaunus, a relative of Vercingetorix's. Caesar sent Labienus, his top sub-commander, to help deal with the crisis of the crumbling Roman position, and when all seemed lost and the Gauls were breaking through, Caesar personally led a cavalry detachment around the Contravallation and came crashing into the Gallic rear. The Gauls were dumbfounded and, thinking they had been surrounded, routed. Vercingetorix surrendered the next day, and according to Plutarch, this was an extremely flamboyant event where he rode on a beautifully adorned horse, stripped off his armor, and sat at Caesar's feet. He would remain a Roman prisoner for 6 years before being strangled to death during Caesar's first triumph. The Battle of Alesia was the culmination of 5 years of campaigning for Caesar, and while the Gallic Wars officially ended in 50 BC, this was like the Yorktown to the American Revolution, but that story is for another day. Caesar had just won his largest military victory, killed 1 million Gauls, enslaved 1 million more, accrued an unthinkable fortune, and carved his way into the history books as a monumental military figure. But this was just the beginning for him. Rome's politics were now his target, and his ambition was insatiable. But he had a lot of enemies, and what he would do next changed everything.